The white lawyer refused to defend the black mother until he saw her name in the case file. He didn't even look up when the judge assigned him her case. "Public defender," he muttered, leafing through the manila file. "I don't do pity cases." Thomas Whitaker had built his reputation as one of the sharpest criminal defense attorneys in Boston, but not because he defended people like her. He wore $1,000 suits, drank $12 espresso, and picked clients like stocks, only the ones with upside. So when Judge Madison assigned him to represent a woman charged with felony assault, he barely blinked. "Let me guess," he said, scanning the summary. "Another angry black woman loses it in a grocery store?" The clerk beside him shifted uncomfortably. "You might want to read the full report." Thomas didn't. Not yet. He was too busy texting his real client, a hedge fund executive caught laundering money through a wellness app. But when he finally sat down that night to read the file in the soft lamplight of his Beacon Hill condo, a jazz record playing low in the background, something happened. He turned to page 4 and froze. The name stared back at him like a slap. Amira Langston. It couldn't be. He sat up straighter, heart thudding now. She was 42, black, a single mother, arrested in Dorchester for allegedly attacking a white school resource officer in a high school hallway. The officer claimed she became belligerent after her son was suspended for disruptive behavior. She reportedly shoved him, slapped away his radio, and screamed until backup arrived. There was body cam footage and 5 witness statements. Thomas didn't even notice the coffee going cold on his desk. Because in 1997, he had met an Amira Langston in a small public library off Quincy Street. She was 14. He was 15. She tutored him in algebra after school because she was 3 years ahead in math, and he, the white boy with divorced parents and a chip on his shoulder, kept failing silently. She had worn her hair in thick braids, carried a blue notebook that she never let anyone touch, had a voice like honey and a stare that could slice through ego. One afternoon, when he was particularly sulky and sarcastic, she looked him dead in the eye and said, "Stop pretending you're stupid. You're just scared." No one had ever said that to him before. He never forgot her. They lost touch after high school. She didn't go to the private academy his father paid for. She didn't get the fast-track scholarship to Dartmouth. She disappeared into the swirl of Boston's underfunded public system while he climbed. Now she was here, in this file, with a charge that could take her away from her son for 5 years. He closed the folder and sat back in his chair. For the first time in a long time, Thomas Whitaker wasn't sure who he was supposed to be. The next morning, he didn't send his junior associate. He went to the holding facility himself. Amira sat behind the glass, arms crossed, her eyes wary. She looked older, of course. Life had drawn lines across her face. But her presence, it was the same. That steady, don't waste my time energy. She wasn't broken, just tired. He picked up the phone. She stared at him for a beat, then picked up hers. "Thomas Whitaker," she said, not a question. "Didn't expect to see you on this side of the glass." He smiled faintly. "Didn't expect to be here either." "You didn't have to take this." "No," he admitted. "I didn't." She raised an eyebrow. "So why did you?" He hesitated. "Because I owe you." Amira gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "You think defending me makes up for all those years?" "No, but it's a place to start." She leaned forward, voice lower now. "This isn't charity. I didn't do what they said." Thomas nodded. "I believe you, but I need to know everything, start to finish." What she told him made his blood run cold. Her son, Malik, 16 years old, straight A student, quiet, tall for his age. He'd been targeted for months by a white teacher who constantly sent him to detention for talking back, even when he was just answering questions. Last week, a fight broke out in the hallway, 2 boys roughhousing. Not even Malik, but the officer on duty pulled him aside, slammed him against the locker, and called for suspension. Amira had come to school furious. She had asked to see the officer's report. He refused. She insisted. He stepped toward her, got in her face, called security. "And that's when I touched his radio," she said, "to turn it off, so he'd listen." Thomas rubbed his temples. "And now they've twisted that into assault. I didn't shove him. I didn't slap him. I just—" She shook her head. "He was about to bury my son." Thomas studied her. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was systemic. This was personal. And now it was his case. Back at his office, Thomas watched the body cam footage 5 times. Then 10. And what he saw made him sick. The officer Greg Stanton had his hand on Malik's shoulder hard enough to leave a mark. He dismissed the assistant principal. He turned off his own mic halfway through the altercation. And when Amira arrived, he puffed his chest, stepped forward like she was a threat. His hand hovered over his taser. Amira never hit him. She barely even touched him. But her tone, calm, direct, unafraid, made him react like she was dangerous. The footage was damning, but so was the bias it fed. Thomas had worked long enough to know that juries don't always care about truth, they care about who looks safe. And in that school hallway, the white officer looked calm, and the black mother looked loud. He needed more. Witnesses. Character references. Anything to prove Amira was not just innocent, but that she'd been targeted. He found Malik's principal first, then 2 teachers, then a guidance counselor who said, "Malik? He's the most respectful kid I know. He volunteers at the library." We all saw what really happened, but nobody wanted to contradict Stanton. Thomas filed subpoenas. The school pushed back. The Glasswell family, yes, the same Glasswells who funded the new equity initiative in the school district, were donors and had Stanton on their payroll. A public hearing was called. And suddenly, Thomas realized this case wasn't just about Amira. It was about every black mother who'd ever walked into a school and been treated like a threat. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Parents, teachers, activists, reporters, all squeezed into benches meant for a sleepy procedural session. But this wasn't procedural anymore. It was explosive. It was national. Thomas sat beside Amira at the defense table, his fingers laced, eyes forward. She wore a simple navy blazer and a white blouse. No jewelry, no makeup, just clarity, just truth. Across from them sat Officer Greg Stanton and his attorney, a smug defense lawyer named Pratt with a penchant for smirking mid-sentence. Judge Madison entered. All rose. When the prosecution began, they tried to frame the story around order. About a mother who couldn't control her emotions and interfered with a routine disciplinary process. They used words like aggressive, loud, and combative. Thomas watched the jury. 3 white men, 1 Latina, 2 white women, 1 elderly black man. And their expressions flickered every time the words painted Amira into a stereotype. When it was his turn, Thomas rose slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't perform. He let the weight of every injustice in the room do the work for him. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "I want you to imagine this. You're a mother. You've raised your son alone. You've taught him to be respectful, quiet, smart, and careful. You've told him every day to keep his hands visible, his voice calm, and his hoodie down. And then one day, you get a call your son is being suspended. Not for fighting, not for drugs, but for being there, for standing in the wrong place, for being black." He paused. "And when you arrive, you find a grown man, armed and hostile, treating your child like a criminal. You step in, you speak up, and suddenly, you're the threat." He turned to Amira. She didn't lay a hand on that man. What she did was challenge the unspoken rules of who gets to speak, who gets to question, and who gets to be heard. Then he played the footage. The room fell silent as the video played on the screen. Malik being grabbed. Amira approaching, hands visible, voice steady. Stanton stepping toward her, cutting her off. The mic going dead. And then nothing. No violence. No assault. Just a mother, pleading, restrained, and furious in the face of injustice. When the video ended, Thomas said nothing. He let the silence settle like dust. Then he called his witnesses. First, Malik's principal. Nervous, but honest. Malik has never been suspended before, and I reviewed the hallway footage myself. He wasn't fighting. Then, the guidance counselor. He's in our STEM mentorship program. He's never shown aggression. Not once. Then a teacher, white, mid-50s, math department, who admitted she had seen Officer Stanton get physical with other black students before. "He gets tense when he's challenged," she said, "especially by women of color." Then, Malik himself. He was scared, but brave. "I just want to go back to school," he said, voice cracking. "I want my mom to be okay." When it was Amira's turn, Thomas nodded to her. "You don't have to defend yourself," he said softly. "Just tell them the truth." She stood, tall and calm. "I walked into that school that day thinking I was protecting my child," she said. "And I left in handcuffs." She looked at the jury. "I didn't shout. I didn't hit anyone. I tried to turn off a radio that was being used to escalate a situation that didn't need to be escalated. And if that's assault, then this country is punishing love. The prosecution offered a weak rebuttal, citing protocol and officer discretion. But the damage was done. The truth had landed, and it wasn't going away. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, Thomas didn't breathe. The foreman stood. In the matter of the Commonwealth versus Amira Langston, we find the defendant not guilty on all charges. Gasps. Then cheers. Someone sobbed behind them. Amira covered her mouth. Thomas exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. She turned to him. Thank you. He shook his head. No. Thank you. For not letting me stay who I was. The case made headlines across the country. Black mother cleared in school assault case. Body cam shows mother acting in defense of son. Defense lawyer changes course, champions justice. But more importantly, the school district launched a formal investigation into Officer Standen. He was placed on administrative leave. A few weeks later, he resigned. The Glasswells. Their equity initiative was exposed as a PR stunt with zero community involvement. Their funding contracts were canceled. Real community leaders were brought in to rebuild the district's disciplinary system. And Malik? He went back to school. On his first day back, a crowd of students met him at the entrance. They clapped. Some hugged him. And one girl said, "Your mom's a hero." Thomas never took another hedge fund client. He left his firm 6 months later, started a small legal aid nonprofit in Dorchester, named it the Langston Justice Project. Their mission, defend the unheard, teach kids their rights, hold the system accountable. He worked late nights again, but this time with purpose. Amira joined the board. Malik started volunteering there in the summers. And every time Thomas passed the framed headline on the wall, the one with Amira's face, calm and powerful, he remembered who he had almost been and who he chose to become. 2 years later, the courthouse that once echoed with accusations against Amira now rang with applause. The Langston Justice Project was hosting its first citywide community forum, a legal rights seminar for families across Boston. Thomas stood backstage, adjusting the mic on his collar, glancing at the crowd through the curtain. Over 500 people had shown up: black mothers, undocumented workers, teenagers, retired janitors, even judges. No one wore suits. No one needed to prove they belonged. He hadn't known it then, but that trial had broken something in him. Or maybe it had uncovered something that was already broken: quiet arrogance. A fear disguised as prestige. A belief, inherited and unspoken, that justice was a transaction, not a right. That belief was gone now, replaced by a deeper truth. You don't save people by representing them. You stand beside them until they don't need you anymore. The crowd erupted in cheers as Amira took the stage first. She was different now, not because she was free, but because she was seen. She spoke without notes, her voice steady, fierce. "Let me be clear," she said. "The system didn't fail me. It worked exactly the way it was designed until we forced it to change." Pause. "I was lucky. I had video. I had a good lawyer. I had you. But most of the women sitting in holding cells right now, they don't. And they're just like me." The crowd was silent. They fight for their kids. They show up at every school meeting. They work 2 jobs and still get labeled aggressive just for asking questions. She looked out over the audience. "So we're building something. Not just to protect us, but to make sure no one like my son, Malik, has to grow up thinking that dignity is a luxury." More applause. Then she smiled toward the side of the stage. "Come on, Tom. Your turn." Thomas stepped out slowly. He wasn't a natural speaker. He had always preferred the courtroom's rules to the stage's spotlight. But today, he didn't need to perform. He just needed to tell the truth. "When I first saw Amira's name in that file," he began, "I almost said no." A ripple through the audience. "I didn't think I belonged in that fight. I thought it wasn't my responsibility. But I've learned something since then." He held up a copy of a photo one taken from that trial, just after the verdict, showing Amira holding Malik's hand, her head high. "I used to think my job was to protect the law. But the law was written by people. People make it. People can unmake it. So now I ask myself one question every day: what side of the story do I want to stand on?" He looked toward Amira. "I chose her side. I'll keep choosing it." Months passed. The project expanded. They opened a second office in Roxbury. Launched Know Your Rights classes in high schools. Amira led a new Parents as Advocates initiative, training mothers to challenge suspensions, police intimidation, and biased policies from within. One day, A mother walked in, crying. Her 8-year-old daughter had been accused of stealing a library book and was almost suspended until the Langston Project intervened. They got the record cleared, then gave that girl 5 new books. She now wanted to be a lawyer. Malik graduated high school with honors. He got into Howard University, majored in political science. His admissions essay was titled, "My Mother is Not a Threat." Years later, a young, white public defender named Riley knocked on the Langston Project's door. She looked nervous. "I studied Whitaker's old cases in law school," she said. "He used to win everything." But then he walked away. Thomas smiled. He didn't walk away. He walked towards something. Riley blinked. "Can I intern here?" Amira handed her a copy of the volunteer handbook. "You can help with intake today," she said. "But first learn the names of every mother in that waiting room." By year 5, the Langston Project had helped over 1,200 families avoid wrongful charges. They overturned suspensions, got convictions expunged, filed lawsuits, won policy changes. And once a year, on the anniversary of Amira's verdict, they hosted a block party in front of the courthouse. Kids ran through sprinklers. A band played black jazz and soul. And chalk artists wrote on the sidewalk in huge, colorful letters. "Loud isn't dangerous. Questioning isn't criminal. Protect Black mothers." At the 10th anniversary celebration, a journalist from the Boston Globe interviewed Amira and Thomas. He asked, looking back, "What changed?" Amira smiled. "Everything." Thomas laughed. "But also just one thing." The journalist leaned in. "What's that?" He looked at Amira. "I stopped choosing safety over truth." Amira now teaches policy workshops to city officials. She's been offered speaking tours, book deals, a documentary. But her favorite days are the quiet ones where a new mother walks into the center, confused and scared, and leaves holding a folder of tools, numbers, and names. Because the system is still broken. But now, no one faces it alone. Late one evening, long after everyone had gone home, Thomas sat alone in the office, staring at that same old photo of Amira and Malik outside the courthouse. He flipped it over. On the back, written in Amira's handwriting, "Not your redemption, just your reminder." He smiled, then turned off the light.